can't help it if all the world is under.
While we were making the record, I live in New York, but we were making the record in Austin, Texas. And one day while I was flying from Austin back to New York, I looked out the window of the airplane and I saw the Mississippi River. And in the lower part of the Mississippi River, it flows through very flat country, and so the river, trying to find the lowest point, just bends and circles and sort of doubles back on itself. And sometimes these loops actually close and the river bursts through the narrow point, and it leaves this little sort of crescent shape or circle shaped lake, and that's called an oxbow lake because it looks sort of like what the yoke that you would put around the head of an ox to draw a cart. And so I was looking at this beautifully geometric ghost of an ancient river channel, and just as I was looking at this, another airplane flying the opposite direction passed straight through the center of it, and there was something about this image of this, this ancient landform with this sleek, modern rocket ship full of people flying through it that I wrote down in my notebook, Jet Plane and Oxbow, and I thought that's the title of the record. Our music often sort of, for me, explores that intersection and that contradiction between the natural and the human world. But in this case, we really tried to bring that into the music through use of early digital technologies, like the kind that existed in like 1979, 1980. I loved the sense of possibility that was there in these early devices, reverb units and synthesizers. And they have a whimsy about them. They have kind of almost an optimism, but they reflect also a sort of a sense of possibility and also anxiety, because I think when they were coming out, people were afraid that these were going to replace musicians, that they were going to replace instruments. In fact, they ended up falling short of that and becoming kind of their own strange thing. But now we live in a time where, something that a computer that could mimic a person is very nearly a reality, if not, it's not far off, I don't think. And so now there's also a sense, I think, of technology about to really change the way that we live in the world. So I thought these sounds, these textures were a good way to explore that kind of metaphorically. This is all very sort of intellectual sounding because this is the way I like to talk about things and think about things, but of course that's not what listening to a record is about, though. Or listening to a record is just about enjoying the record. And if I've done my job right, I've done all the hard work. You have to listen to it. And I want the record to be I think it's quite simple melodically, actually. I wanted to make it a record that you could enjoy when you first listen to it and just sort of go on a journey as you listen, but then have enough detail and depth that if you listen to it, 10 times, 20 times, 30 times, it would still reveal more detail as you went, like my favorite records usually do. The last record that we did, Animal Joy, was a really personal record for me. I decided to kind of make a record about my life, which is something I hadn't done in any of our other records. And then with this record, I don't know if it's just that a product of getting older or what exactly, but I was thinking a lot about just what it meant to be part of the United States, because the U.S. is such a frustrating and also kind of inspiring place. I really like it, but there are also some really dangerous sort of pathogens that are always simmering under the surface in it. Right now, of course, we're in the election season, so you see all the aspects of the American id like coming out of the closet. But in a way, the record is a love letter to the country in some ways, even though it's also a protest record. I remember reading an interview with David Bowie from about 1980 where he talked about Scary Monsters, his record, being a protest record. And I thought that was a really interesting way to think about that record, and I thought I'd like to make something like that. Like a record that you could, wouldn't just hit you over the head or be preachy, but all the same would address some of the undercurrents within my culture that are frightening.
Where are the Americans? All calling on their own tonight, filling the remaining hours, the only sound. All the bells up on the hill, the only light. All the lanterns in the wind, the only sign. Skins the rust off.
We're going to begin the tour for the record in Europe this time, for the first time. And I think we'll be in Amsterdam on, I believe it's February 13th. It might be February 12th though. We need to check. We're playing at Paradiso North, and then we're playing in Brussels the day after at the Botanique. And I'm really excited about it. It's always great to play here. We always look forward to it. And it'll have the early show energy, which is different from where you are later in the tour. Sometimes later in the tour it can be more polished, but sometimes it loses a little of the excitement that you had at the beginning.